Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around I'm playing as the Dark Elves led by Marathi against the Lizardmen led by Asukamaru on the map, the Temple of Huanchi. And this game was definitely a bit of a funny one, as is less of a serious matchup or a serious comp matchup I suppose. And a bit of cheese on cheese strategy here, so let's see how things break down. So because things break down immediately, I'll discuss my comp and why I brought it, but we both kind of went for cheese here, I think. So, my composition, I did bring for my lord, I brought Marathi. The only reason I brought Marathi is because she's a decent melee combatant. She gets both armor piercing and anti-large, even when she's mounted on Sulafet, her Pegasus. And she still has crazy amounts of mobility with that, speed of 105, and she can bring a decent amount of support spells. Now, I didn't bring too many of them. I brought Soul Stealer for the single target damage, brought Soul Blight for debuffs, Doom and Darkness for leadership because I was expecting a conventional Lizardmen build, Deadly Onslaught just for the improvement of combat stats, Heart Render to debuff enemies, and Enchanting Beauty to debuff enemies again. And of course she does have Greater Arcane Conduit, Spiteful Conjuration, as well as Life Leeching, which all occur when she's casting, or, well, sorry, Spiteful Conjuration is a debuff that occurs when she's casting, and Life Leeching is a improvement that happens when she's casting as well. And yeah, Marathi's basically just here to give me a decent lord that's fairly cheap and immobile and can get to the front line because this is a Vanguard build. Now, because I wanted a Vanguard build that could, and I wanted to, your only real options is for Vanguard with Dark Elves are Dark Riders and Shades. So I brought Shades en masse. The composition is actually a little different as you go down the line. Down here on the low ground, I do have 2 units of Shades with Greatswords. These guys are there to bust up enemy armored infantry once the fighting's kind of degenerated or I've run out of ammo. Then I have 3 units of Shades with dual weapons. These guys are there mostly to deal with enemies. They're a little cheaper than the great weapons, and they're mostly there to deal with skinks and lighter units because, of course, one of the greatest threats really to Shades is if skinks try to chase you down, because they are fast enough to run down Shades, whereas none of the other Lizardmen units, except their cavalry and some of their monsters, really are. But those are much easier to focus down because there's usually fewer of them. So Skinks were definitely a bit of a threat for me, so I brought dual weapons. And then even the single weapon Shades, which are over here, they're once again a little cheaper, but it gives me a very strong firing line, and these guys can definitely tear through those Chameleon Skinks very quickly. Alongside that, I have 2 units of normal vanilla unshielded Dark Riders, and then a single unit of shielded Dark Riders up here on the high ground. And they're just there to throw in the path of approaching enemy units and just try to slow them down long enough for the Shades to do damage. For my opponent, he did bring Lord Mazamundi, which is a bit of an interesting choice. And on his Stegadon mount, with Net of a Mintok, which could definitely be a bit of a problem for my troops. He brought a Comet of Cassandora and Apotheosis, which is a heal, and of course he does have that built-in banishment, though my opponent did not bring Ruination of Cities. Nor, for that matter, did he bring the Bubble Shield. That provides magic resistance and some other buff, I do believe. But he did bring the Summoner's Standard, which will improve missile resistance and melee defense for all nearby units. And the missile resistance could be pretty significant against Shades. Otherwise, my opponent did bring a very hefty kind of heavy shooting line. Actually, I suppose heroes I should mention. He did bring a Skink Chief on a Pterodon, which is mostly just there for harassment. Their melee stats is pretty low on the Skink Chief, but he can poke at me and definitely be a bit of a nuisance. And I do believe they have a slight built-in they have a slight built-in missile resist of 15%, so not bad. Then big kind of hefty, heavily armored shooting contingent, 3 units of Bastiladons with solar engines. Now these guys do have the blind effect, which could definitely be a bit of a problem because it can debuff my troops and make them much worse in melee or much worse at shooting, which could be unfortunate. And then a single Stegadon, which of course has the ballista and will do some damage to armored units. And for his main frontline contingent, my opponent brought multiple units of Chameleon Skinks, 5 of them I do believe, and they are spread out all along here. Actually 6 units by the look of it. They are spread out all over here, ready to kind of pepper anything down. And these guys will definitely trade fairly well with Dark Shards because they have a built-in 30%, I do believe, actually 40% missile resistance. So they will actually trade very, very effectively with Shades on a tit-for-tat basis, at least in range. So without further ado, we're starting things right off the bat. Obviously, the Shades are on top of the Chameleon Skinks in a heartbeat. I push them into melee pretty shortly, and I throw the Dark Riders into these Chameleon Skinks over here. I'm pushing these Dark Riders over here into the front, trying to get them on top of these Chameleon Skinks. I'm a little slow in getting Marathi up and running. But you can see I do force melee on the Chameleon Skinks and do start tearing through them. The Chameleon Skinks definitely cannot go toe-to-toe with Shades. Shades are honestly a very, very potent melee unit. Though it's not supposed to be their sort of forte, it's definitely something they're very good at. In the meantime, Lord Mazdamundi does get a little cheeky here, thinking that he can just pile into a bunch of Shades, which is a terrible idea because I will shortly focus him down. Now he does pop a spell here. I do believe it's Net of a Mintok going down. Actually, it's Soul Stealer for me, but he's just shortly popped Net of Mintok. Over here you can see it. And he just tries to try to force path away, but I'm simply focusing down Mazdamundi, just trying to force... this is... because he does have those spells, I do want to prevent him from using those, and I'm simply trying to assassinate as quickly as I can. You can see the Shades are getting focused. They're pretty blobbed up, so they're definitely taking a nasty amount of hurt from the Bastiladons. I should spread them out a little more, and it would have been much better. The Dark Riders, in the meantime, are trying to run down these Chameleon Skinks, doing a decent job of it. Over here on the right flank, my opponent has pushed out with his Stegodon, and fortunately one of the good things is that the Chameleon Skinks have very, very bad range, so they are forced to come out and fight me here. You can see the Stegodon, though, is definitely plowing through these Dark Riders and not really struggling very much. In the meantime, these Bastiladons are committing to try to push into these Shades, who are at this point kind of scattering all over the place. Unfortunately, I did put these guys into melee mode, so they're chasing the Stegodons, or Bastiladons, rather than just shooting them down. Here, Marathi is trying to tie down the Chameleon Skinks, and not doing the greatest job of it. But you can see that laser fire does hit these Dark Riders, and they promptly rout off. In the meantime, this poor Bastiladon over here is just going down like a 9-pin. I do believe it actually dies, and I'm simply just trying to focus fire these larger monsters. Shades have incredibly high DPS, especially when they're not being debuffed. And you can see my opponent is focus firing, which is good and all, but it means that his debuff is not being spread out. And as a result, I'm simply able to focus fire these Bastiladons very, very quickly. You can see that armor-piercing damage is just tearing through them. Shades have 34 DPS ranged when not affected by debuffs or buffs or that sort of stuff. In the meantime, over here, Marathi, I did try to stick her on the Sinking Chief, but she kind of missed. She overshot him, not entirely sure if she lost track or something. For some reason, she stopped chasing him. I drew drop Soul Stealer on him, and that will heal Marathi a little bit, as well as cause some damage to the King Chief. The Chameleon Skinks are actually dishing out a decent amount of hurt and range, just sniping down my Shades, largely because I'm not actually trying to shut down the Skinks. I'm so focused on the large targets, such as these Bastiladons. And so these guys are just having kind of free range, sniping away, pecking away at my troops. Now, unfortunately, over here, the Shades with Great Swords do get plowed into by the Stegodon, so I do try to spread them out now, engage from all sides. You can see these Shades are getting focused down very heavily. They're definitely struggling. With the 40% missile resistance, the Chameleon Skinks do not trade badly with Shades at all, but in melee, they will do pretty terribly, even against a very small unit of Shades, though perhaps this is small enough to where they can crush it, especially with the help of that Bastiladon. In the meantime, I'm simply trying to focus down this last remaining Bastiladon with Solar Engine. These Dark Riders are kind of running ham now. This unit has recovered, and I'm pulling it back into the fray. And honestly, once these guys are already starting to run a little low on ammo, the Dark Riders will tear through Chameleon Skinks. Chameleon Skinks only have missile resistance, so they definitely won't perform too well against Shades or Dark Riders in close quarters. They have very low armor. They're only 30 and somewhat poor melee stats, so they're nothing too fancy there. You can see Marathi does dive in. And my opponent is definitely, at this point, is on his last legs here. I've kind of focused him down with the Shades. You can see two of another Soul Stealer is going down. It's the only spell I've really been casting, because I haven't really been going for any morale breaks or anything like that. Or armor debuffs, because I've got such a high armor-piercing army. Honestly, probably shouldn't have even brought that spell. But you can see, I just want it in case I'd be forced into melee, because it would be very useful. Now you can see he does pop Cold-Blooded, but I do focus him down pretty heavily, and it does simply force him to break. As you can see, the Shades do absolutely ludicrous amounts of damage. You can see over here the Stegodon is popping away some shots, and might attempt to commit now. Definitely with all these blobbed up troops, it could definitely be a bit of a problem for me. I'm definitely floating a rather small amount of troops at this point. Some of these units are pretty badly beaten up, though some are still fairly healthy, sitting at 50 models. Some of these guys are in the 40s, so on and so forth. You can see the Stegodon just getting focused down very, very quickly. In the meantime, Marathi has dove into the back again, going after these Chameleon Skinks. The Dark Riders are simply mopping up. That is definitely one of the best uses, simply chasing off enemy troops. And with the use of Cold-Blooded on this Skink Chief, he has no more sources of self-sustain. He can try to poke away at me, but honestly, trying to snipe it out with Shades, it's basically a one-way trip to the grave. And you can see him flying around here, just trying to be a nuisance, but it's really not going to do it. He does dive into these Shades. But honestly, I don't think this King Chief can actually fight in melee against Shades. Shades are very, very powerful in close quarters, and I do not try to kind of commit on him, but it's too little too late. It's kind of game over, and my troops do win. So this was more of a kind of fun game than an actual serious matchup or anything like that. Both of us went for a somewhat cheesy strat, and I don't necessarily think his idea was bad. Dark Elves aren't that quick. Chameleon Skinks are very mobile, and as long as you can kite with the Bastillodons, you can definitely snipe away at enemy high armor targets. Especially with the net of a Mintok on Lord Mazdamundi and the poison from the Skinks. You can definitely slow down your enemy and just snipe away at them with the Bastillodon, with the Solar Engine, and the Stegodon, and that sort of stuff. You can see over here these Chameleon Skinks got a ludicrous amount of damage done, and that's because I simply put I wasn't shutting them down. I didn't have enough Dark Riders to shut all of them down at once, and my Shades were all focused on the enemy range contingent. Now, to be fair, Skinks can actually kite Shades. They're actually faster, so if my opponent had decided to kind of micro them away, and I tried to engage in melee with the Shades, I would have been in trouble, because they can keep fire. The Skinks can fire while moving, Shades cannot, and all that sort of stuff. But I just had a lot of shooting. I had a lot of armor-piercing shooting, which Shades are incredibly good at just leveling. You can see several of these units were still pretty healthy at the end game, and Shades can easily level high armor targets. It's definitely something you want to watch out for if you're playing as Lizardmen against Dark Elves, even if they run a conventional build. If they mix in a few Shades into their army, they can easily annihilate lords such as Krokgar or Mazdamundi in the space of seconds. So definitely pretty brutal. And you can see in the losses, it definitely kind of shows. These guys are very flexible. They can cut through melee infantry. They can cut through basically anything except cavalry. It's a bit of a struggle for them, but definitely Shades I think are a very very finely tuned unit. Its only cost being their real downside. And you can see some of these guys did veteran up, which kind of shows just how much damage they were doing. Regardless, good game to my opponent. I hope you guys enjoyed this bit of a fun little game. This was also the game actually that got me my Plague Lord or the achievement, or the one for beating someone from CA. So I thought that was pretty funny. Or beating someone who beat someone with this achievement before, the CA achievement. So regardless, I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions about Quick Match or Total War Warhammer 2 or anything like that, be sure to post those down in the comments. We do have a Mortal Empires. The Mortal Empires patch is coming within a few days, and I'm definitely hyped for that. Definitely looks good. Though most of the south lines is getting cut off, but otherwise it just looks absolutely immense, and definitely looking forward to that. Definitely feeling the hype. And yeah, as I said, if you guys have any comments, criticism, anything like that, be sure to post those down in the comments. And I suppose that's it. I appreciate you all for watching, guys, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.